think we are live. Welcome to Panzer Dragoon Mini. This is a Game Gear version of Panzer Dragoon. If you've never seen it before, well, get ready. Just double check my settings. Should have it on easy. No, it's on normal. Good thing I double checked. The game starts off incredibly easy, but late game can get a little hectic. So we're going to get ready here in 3. Well, hold on. Almost forgetting. We gotta pick our dragon first. I'm gonna pick blue, just because, you know, it's the iconic Panzer Dragoon dragon. In 3, 2, 1. Really cute little chibi versions of the dragons in this game. So, you're probably wondering, how is this a speed game? Well, the faster I kill stuff, the faster I go through the level. Bosses are button mashing hell. It's pretty much how fast can I mash and how well can I aim for, you know, a minute or two straight on some of these bosses, especially the last level, which is a boss rush. So by killing enemies faster here, it does speed up the level. I've timed it. If I actually just sit on the screen and don't shoot a single enemy, it takes about 30 seconds longer than if I, you know, shoot stuff very quickly. And this is pretty much what every level in the game will look like. It is a plane on the bottom that's always moving to give the illusion of depth. And the only thing that changes is the background, the color of the ground, and of course the enemies and the patterns in which they come. For targeting normal enemies here, pretty much just going to hold down the attack button. And in traditional Panzer Dragoon style, which I think is personally kind of cool that they included in this version of the game, you can still lock on. Mashing to shoot normal enemies just doesn't make sense. Alright, let's get our mash on. So there are mini-bosses and there are main bosses in each of the 5 levels, or 4 levels. The 5th level is a little different than others. And as long as I get in a good position for most of these mini-bosses and bosses, I can pretty much avoid most damage. That's not always the case with every mini-boss or boss. I'm going to take some damage for sure. And for marathon safety, I'm going to be trying to shoot as many of the projectiles as the bosses shoot at me as possible, because it is very possible to die in some of the later, harder levels if I take too many hits. But hopefully that won't happen. As you can tell, the music in this game is quite the banger. It's the same looping tune over and over. So I hope you all have headphones on for this. This game came out in 1996, late November 1996 in Japan. And that was shortly before the Game Gear was discontinued in Japan. And this was sold under a different label because Sega was getting kind of desperate to try and push sales of the Game Gear. Because if you didn't know, it didn't sell quite as well in Japan as it did elsewhere. So what they did with the end of the Game Gear's life is they started marketing games towards children, young children. And this was part of the Kids Gear line, which pretty much just meant that they marketed the game differently. The box had sort of like this fun, colorful, bubbly font that said Kids Gear on it, and instead of sticking it in, say, the electronics or video game section in the stores, they'd stick it in the children's toy sections. Their efforts didn't pay off, however. Didn't really help the sales of the Game Gear much, and, you know, I'm sure releasing Panzer Dragoon for children was also not the right step that they needed to make. But alas, we have a children's marketed Panzer Dragoon game. That is, because it was released so late in the Game Gear's lifespan, you're looking at an extremely expensive game if you want a physical copy of this. It very rarely ever shows up for sale. In fact, I checked right before we went live. The last one that sold, and it's the only copy that's sold in the past several months, sold for $180, or about $200 with shipping, with the manual, without the box. If you're looking for this game with the box, you're looking at around $300, I'd say, from what I can remember popping up. So this boss here, you can't shoot gray projectiles that are getting shot at you from this other enemy, but you can shoot out the yellow projectiles that bosses shoot at you. So it's pretty much just dodge, make sure I mash hard enough, don't get hit too much. In fact, if you're looking to go as fast as you possibly can in this, you actually want to avoid shooting the yellow bullets, because every time you shoot one of those, that's one less shot that will go from you to the boss. So ideally in record attempts or PB attempts in this, I would purposely avoid shooting yellow bullets as much as I can without dying. That way I can get just a few extra shots in. And in later levels, especially for one boss, you can skip a phase in 2 bosses in this game if you're really good at mashing and if you're really good at not shooting too many yellow bullets. For the sake of a marathon, though, I'm not going to be taking too much damage, because safety. So this game likes to also alternate the patterns where enemies spawn. So you're going to notice it's a lot of the same stuff. Enemies spawn on the left, enemies spawn on the right. It just alternates back and forth. And just like Panzer Dragoon, the originals, you do get some life back between bosses as well. The final level actually will restore my health after every single boss that I fight in boss rush mode. So the final level is actually one of the easiest levels. It's level 4. That is the real run killer and danger. I definitely appreciate what they tried to do to convert this to handheld. Just what they do with the camera shifting in the bottom of the screen to kind of show you that, okay, now we're looking to the right, now we're looking to the left. And if you're wondering, no, you cannot shift your camera on the fly like other Panzer Dragoon games. It's doing it all for me. I am not pressing a button to shift that camera angle. Alright, so here I just stay right in this spot, and as long as I'm in this almost exact position, I can just mash on the attack button, and I will never get shot by any of those bullets and take no damage. I don't know how many of you have played the remake of Panzer Dragoon on the Switch. Picked that up day one. Kind of enjoyed it. And recently, for those of you that did buy that on day one like I did, and maybe put it down and haven't played it since, they've actually come out with a patch that has added a new soundtrack in as well. Kind of figured I'd give some of you Panzer Dragoon fans a heads up. If you weren't aware, they updated the sound effects. They've added in an arranged soundtrack, different from the original that was included from the day one launch. I haven't had a chance to go back to it yet, but I thought it was a valiant effort at remaking the original Panzer Dragoon. So it's kind of cool that they're still supporting it with patches and keeping fans happy. The controls are still a little loose, still a little weird, but hopefully they still release some patches for it to keep us happy. I'm looking forward to seeing what the arranged soundtrack is like in that, personally. It's completely new, built, composed from the ground up. I forget his name, but it's from the composer from Panzer Dragoon Orto. They're fixing some gameplay stuff soon too. Oh, awesome. Have they said specifically what they're going to be fixing? Which, by the way, I made a speedrun leaderboard for that game, for those that love mashing buttons on bosses. It is a terrible speed game. In fact, I would go as far as to say that this game here is a better speedrun than Panzer Dragoon Remake. Because in Panzer Dragoon Remake, you cannot influence how fast you move through normal stages. It's the same time every time, whereas at least this game, you can go through stages outside of bosses faster. Loading times were also terrible in the remake, so hopefully they're fixing that soon. Alrighty, stage 3. The creepy Lavender Down Pokemon-esque music in this level. This is when the game starts getting a tiny bit more difficult. The boss in this level is definitely going to deal a lot more damage to me than most of the other bosses and levels. This is when I start needing to be mindful of taking too much damage in the normal section of the game. Because if I take too much damage, there is a risk that I can get shot down in the boss. And yes, I can mash and try and shoot enemies like this, but it is awful outside of bosses, so you want to lock on to every enemy regardless. Doesn't matter what it is, you lock on. There's only one enemy in this game that takes more than one shot to kill, and even those I lock onto 3 times. And now you're going to see that the patterns are starting to get a little bit more complex. bullets are also coming at me a lot faster. And the next stage is pretty much this, just amplified a bit more. Unfortunately, all the mid-bosses are pretty similar to one another. They don't really deviate too much. Pretty much just get in position like this and mash away, and we take no damage. Seems like I lock on, fire a shot in a different direction, and the enemy still dies. Once I get that lock on, doesn't matter where I am or when I let go of that button, they will die regardless. Yep, you lock on, they die automatically. As soon as I let go... Okay, these are the only enemies in the game here where I have to lock on 3 times to kill them. The most annoying enemy, because of that reason. And it is simply just faster to try and lock on 3 times rather than mash. It is really hard to accurately shoot by mashing normal enemies. If you haven't Googled this game, though, I would encourage you just to check out the cover for it. The dragon is so cute. And also, it's kind of cool just to see what Sega was trying to go for marketing-wise when I was mentioning Kids Gear earlier. Just to kind of see the approach that they were taking to try and push Game Gear out to very young children. There were only a handful of games released for that Kids Gear line. And if you are wondering, this is not being emulated right now. This is being played on the Mega SG. Which, however, because it runs at a ever so slightly faster frame rate, and I forget the exact number, I'm sure Bovine in chat will remind me what that number is. It means that my finished time on this is about approximately 1 second or so faster than it would be on a normal cart. Or a normal console, rather. Okay, so this is the boss that I gotta be really careful of not taking too much damage on. I mean, I'm fine right now, but I can take a little too much damage on this, and he could potentially kill me. Like, in PB attempts, I definitely avoid shooting all of his yellow projectiles, just so that I can get as many shots through as I can. Alrighty, this is level 4. This level here, I actually need to kind of focus on, because the enemy patterns are the worst in the game in this level. And there are a lot of shots that are going to be coming my way, and I need to make sure that I have a certain amount of health going into the boss for this stage, because typically I get there with about half of my health bar coming out of the normal section. Because don't forget, I have to go through a mini-boss first before I get to the end boss. These guys are tricky. Gotta watch their shots. I guess I'm on a mission here to prove that you can speedrun rail shooters, right? Like, I actually did a speedrun for Rez earlier in RETROTHON. I don't know, I've just taken to rail shooters lately as speedruns. They're really fun. Mostly because they're somewhat relaxing. You know, you can kind of just chill, sit back, mash your buttons, just aim. You don't gotta worry about no crazy skips or glitches, you know? Okay, here's that enemy where you gotta shoot 3 times. And I am kind of suffering from a migraine headache right now because I was practicing for my run that's coming up for 3DO Block. The game gave me a migraine. So, stay tuned for that one. Get your bottles of Tylenol ready. Oh, God. Okay, this is probably the hardest screen in the game, outside of bosses, for dodging enemy shots. Every time that I miss a shot, like a lock-on, it does waste a tiny bit of time. So ideally, you know, obviously I want to be locking onto enemies and destroying them as quickly as possible. So every time I miss a lock-on, it wastes a tiny fraction of time. It adds up. Alright, let's make sure we get the right position here. And then we mash away. Right here, as you can see, all 3 of those shots are obliterated by my bullets. I'm going to take shots here from this normal enemy. It's faster just to stay in place and not worry about trying to shoot him or dodge that bullet. Mega SG ain't faster, yeah. Tell that to the Sonic mods on speedrun.com. They are very peculiar about the Mega SG. But we won't go there. They also want me to mark it as emulation. I'm like, sorry, I'm not doing that. It was for a different game. Obviously a Sonic game, but some people take the Mega SG very seriously when it comes to speedrunning. Alright, so this is the final normal section of the game. After this, we fight what is probably the coolest boss in this game. All the other bosses previously are sort of a static giant sprite that kind of float around, while this next boss is pretty awesome in terms of giant animated sprite for Game Gear. Yeah, it's a very minor difference machine, but some speedrunning communities take that minor difference beyond proportions. I had one of my runs rejected because I submitted on a Mega SG. It's like, okay, alright. Speedrunning can be serious business, that's for sure. Okay, here's the cool boss. Unfortunately, I missed some shots there. I was kind of daydreaming, or in this case, night dreaming, I suppose. You can shoot him when he first enters the screen and get a few pot shots in, which is pretty important on this boss because you can skip his final phase where he jumps into the air. I'm definitely not going to get that on this attempt. You have to mash your heart out and pretty much never mess up whatsoever in this fight. But you can, and I'll point it out, the phase that I can skip, and it's a pretty significant time skip. Okay, so this, I would need to kill the boss here. He's going to jump into the air there, right? Now look at his health. So if I was a little bit better with mashing, I could have killed him before he jumped and went off screen, and then also had to deal with waiting for him to come back on the screen. But overall, that was pretty solid. Alright, so final stage here is a boss rush. My favorite looking level when it comes to color theme. Purple and blue with the starry sky. It's pretty neat looking. Now the nice thing about this level is that after every mini-boss and every boss, I get all my health back. Or not so much mini-bosses, we're just fighting all the end-stage bosses. That is the cover art dragon. Yeah, I'm using the dragon that's on the cover for this game. Just got a little bit of time wasting going on here between bosses. Oh, but see, something like that wastes time. If I miss a shot like that, it wastes a little bit of time, so gotta be more precise. Now, I have tried different mashing tech in this game. Every button on the Genesis controller does shoot, but if you try and mash the buttons, like alternating between, like, say, A and B, it actually stops you from shooting. So the fastest way to mash in this game is actually just with one button. If you try and alternate buttons or anything of the matter, it actually kind of stops your shots. So you can mash too fast in this game, apparently. Alright, so this is the last chance that we can have for a phase skip on this boss. Insanely difficult to do. Not feasible in most runs. Kind of just have to accept the fact that you're not going to get it. Sure to try to preempt him falling backwards. Like, see, making that mistake there where I didn't get shots when he was falling backwards. That prevents phase skip. Oh, so close. So close. And this one's even worse for missing phase skip because I think he summons a couple enemies here. Nope, never mind. We're good. I'm thinking of the next boss. Alrighty, final boss. This is by far the hardest boss to get perfectly and get right. Wow, I locked on to something in the background there. I've never seen that before. Because of the middle phase. The middle phase of this boss is probably the hardest thing to aim at in the entire game. When it transforms into a flower, and keeping my aiming reticle on it and getting as many shots off as I can is actually incredibly difficult. So let's see if I can get some good shots here. Not the greatest, not the greatest. Could have been better, but we got enough shots off to make it still pretty fast here for the last phase. It can still be faster. If I can get that a little bit better, you can skip the final phase of this boss as well. Ideally, I would kill him here before he goes off screen, but it would have required just a couple more shots in flower phase. Now, as you can see, skipping this phase would be pretty fast, because you would avoid these needless enemies that spawn in, and then having to wait for him to enter back on screen. Alrighty. Time's going to be coming up here as soon as we fade to black. Congratulations. We did it. That's Panzer Dragoon Mini on the Game Gear. My time on that is actually only about 14 seconds off of my PB, so not terrible. Hopefully you all enjoyed that rare glimpse into Panzer Dragoon Mini on the Game Gear. Definitely do not spend your money on this game by any means, unless you're like hardcore into Panzer Dragoon. Anyway, enjoy the rest of Game Gear Block. We got Jurassic Park coming up here next, and then after that we transition into 3DO Block. How exciting. Which I will be joining you all on for again in a little bit. So enjoy the rest of Game Gear Block.